But science is ever changing. Science is full of conjecture, and literacy can make, in the literature we can have issues. We think it's a double-blinded placebo trial, and we saw this with COVID, didn't we? Where they retracted certain vaccines, or where lots of people lost their lives because they didn't have the capacity to make the antibodies. And I think where linear medicine fails is it fails in its ability to give us back our strength and our conviction in understanding, why does my child suffer eczema, rather than going, oh, it's just genetic. So that drug is going to take the inflammation away from my child, which means my child might be able to sleep better. They're not going to itch and be irritated. They might be able to eat food better. But then there's a plethora of side effects attributed to that drug. Also, do I understand that taking this drug is not curing my child's eczema? Taking the drug is only taking the hype from the inflammation.
I want to unpack your profession for a moment. I'll be the first one to profess that I'd, growing up, never been to a naturopath before. My parents never ascribed to that. It was only my wife who said that maybe we should consider sort of alternative medicine for the kids when they got sick and this and that. My father-in-law was a big fan of your line of work.
Thank you very much.
And the reason why I always struggled to place faith in it was, to be completely honest, I just felt that doctors and conventional medicine, tried and tested, they have clear regulations. They have licensing, they have insurances, there are regulatory protections that are given to the consumer or the customer or whatever it is, to an extent, okay, that there's an entire infrastructure around this. And we, being in financial services, really value that type of stuff where, okay, if you're dealing with a licensed practitioner, there's an element of confidence that you have in ensuring that, okay, well, there's a higher body and higher authority that oversees what this person's doing. And therefore, what they advise me to do and whatnot is controlled to an extent. Obviously, that doesn't mean that it's not open to manipulation, et cetera, or fraud, or whatever the case may be.
I understand.
So that's what's always kept me sort of a bit, give me some trepidation around naturopathy. What can you sort of share around that, in terms of obviously the fact that you've gone through that journey and educated yourself and completed all that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it still that area where the doctors call it quacks, or has it now become this fully fledged professional, proper profession in its own right, where people can now instill a lot more faith and belief in what it is that you do?
Yeah, I appreciate.
I hope I didn't insult anyone.
Not at all. I appreciate the pseudoscientific constructive criticism that you've put forward, and I appreciate it because a lot of people have that belief, kind of like, if it's natural medicine, it's probably gibberish and there's no science to back it up. And if it's conventional medicine, double-blinded placebo trials, go, okay. So very, very good question. So let me break it down. First and foremost, conventional medicine and natural medicine are, other than their desire to treat the person, are probably completely non-aligned. The form of medicine that you adhere to is very linear. It is not holistic in its approach, and it is very linear and very stereotypical. So let me give you an example. You get a cold or flu, and a cold and flu are two different things. Colds are generally caused by bacterial infections, or colds can be caused by cellular debris and the cleansing of the cell. And a flu is generally influenza, so it's viral, so on and so forth. You go to your GP. What does your GP prescribe you? What's the number one prescription? Tell me. What number one prescription for colds?
Cold and flu med of some sort?
Antibiotics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you need to understand that the limitation of a linear approach is that there is no preventative medicine. You only go to your doctor once you are sick. You're not taught how to not get sick. You're only taught to band-aid the symptom. The doctor doesn't say to you, you know what, you're a little bit, you're sleeping really late. You haven't really had any fresh fruit or vegetables, you're living off refined carbs and deep fried food. That's really taking away from your immune system's functionality. So that's number one. So the number one is a holistic paradigm versus a linear paradigm. And I am unapologetically clear that the linear paradigm is not necessarily aligned with holism or Islam. A holistic paradigm is aligned. And I'll tell you why. 100 years ago, the doctor, who was the naturopath, by the way, prior to the line of medicine that you subscribe to, for example, morphine comes from the plant willow. Before we were able to so for you to show some level of appreciation for natural medicine, nothing does not come from nothing. Something comes from something, right? So when we had the audacity and the science to take willow as a plant, put it under the microscope and have a look and go, oh my God, analgesic properties, let's take that and let's increase its availability by 100-folds, and we call this morphine. And it's spectacular because if you have a car accident or you're injured or you're cut, you need to be put to sleep so that you don't faint from the pain in order for surgery to be possible. But that didn't come from man's intellect. That came from what God has given you on this earth to be able to observe. Now, so it's important to understand that A, the approach is linear, e.g., there's no preventative medicine, and generally there are only drugs that are subscribed for particular conditions. And the other, I suppose, and you need to understand science is an atheistic system in that a lot of the time people don't realize that when you blindly trust science, you become literally a part of the scientific cult too. I blindly trust the Quran. So if the Quran tells me something, I will take it. I will understand what is equivalent to it in this day and age. I will try and understand, what can I do that aligns with what is in there. But I understand that it's not conjecture. It will not change. It is applicable for every generation. But science is ever changing. Science is full of conjecture, and literacy can make, in the literature we can have issues. We think it's a double-blinded placebo trial, and we saw this with COVID, didn't we? Where they retracted certain vaccines, or where lots of people lost their lives because they didn't have the capacity to make the antibodies. And so we need to understand that whenever God is not involved in something, you need to take it with a pinch of salt. So the first differential that we need to make is a linear approach versus a holistic approach. The second ungodly approach is that everything just happens. Like you got a thyroid problem, I don't know why you have it, genetics. Or like you've got eczema, we don't know why it happens, but use this corticosteroid. That is not aligned with the Islamic philosophy of understanding that there is a reason for everything, or it's a multifactorial underlying cause. I understand science because unless every single person that suffers from a particular disease shows the exact same symptom, we cannot say that this symptom is 100% causing this condition. I understand. But then you need to understand the flip side, where that is very limiting in our approach to understand the science then. So the second part to that is going, all right, one's linear, one's holistic. And then the second part is in understanding that, you can't just live your life for 80 years going, everything just happens to me because, and I don't know why. I don't think there's anything more pseudoscientific than that. Kind of like it just happens. Like you just get thyroid disease. You just become obese. You just have a heart attack. You just get cancer. Nothing just happens. As a matter of fact, when we look at it from an Islamic perspective, Allah, when speaking in the Quran, whether in first person, second person, third person, the reference always made is things like, this is for the person with intellect. This is for the person who thinks. Do you not ponder? And it encourages us to understand. And I think where linear medicine fails is it fails in its ability to give us back our strength and our conviction in understanding, why does my child suffer eczema, rather than going, oh, it's just genetic, or we don't know why, just use the corticosteroid. Why do you have asthma? Asthma just happens. And that's not really, let alone Islamic, it's not true either. And I understand it's because science doesn't have the time to kind of go, your asthma is because you have, an imbalance in your lung microbiome, and your asthma is because, the pollution in the water that you drink or the air that you breathe is really high in aluminium, and that's gone in, the pH of the microbiome of the lung is not working efficaciously, and everything, the oxygen exchange rate drops, and so on and so forth. So I think that whilst I completely understand that it makes you feel safe, that science looks like it is double-blinded, placebo, tested, so on and so forth, you also acknowledge that whilst you get the benefit of the suppressed inflammation, if you ever read the leaflet, you also get 600 different side effects. And again, when we unpack that from an Islamic jurisprudence perspective, I believe in life, and I apply this philosophy to everything. Does the advantage outweigh the disadvantage? So that drug is going to take the inflammation away from my child, which means my child might be able to sleep better. They're not going to itch and be irritated. They might be able to eat food better. But then there's a plethora of side effects attributed to that drug. Also, do I understand that taking this drug is not curing my child's eczema? Taking the drug is only taking the hype from the inflammation. And am I comfortable that this drug is actually not a cure? It's a symptom-based approach. Am I comfortable to symptomatically band-aid the inflammation for now, whilst understanding that it can give me fungal growth? It can suppress my growth. It can suppress my immune system. And so parents don't read leaflets, and a doctor doesn't have the time at the moment to kind of go, you want this drug, and by the way, here's the leaflet. These are all the side effects. And if they did, guess what? You're going to go, I don't think I want to give that antibiotic to my child. So what's the solution now? And I think it really takes away your ability to go, well, wait a minute, Allah gave you an immune system. The immune system is embedded with divine intervention. It knows what it needs to do under the correct circumstances. And that is where the tawakkul, that is where the trust in God comes in, to kind of go, well, Allah has created me perfectly, not imperfectly. However, what do I need to do to make sure that my functioning, my physiology is expressing correctly? And so the idea is to support the immune system in a way which will enable you to heal from that particular calamity, that physical predicament that you're experiencing.